Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in. It is good to have you with us here on Red Ice Radio. I'm Henrik Palmgren from Sweden. Our website is redicecreations.com, where you'll find a lot more of our open, honest investigations, radio programs, videos, and news articles examining the lies and the issues of our times and the challenges that we face. Today we have Max Igan back with us from the Crow House down in Australia. And we are going to talk about Zionist terrorism in Gaza and the war and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. We are also going to discuss the utter lies in the Zionist-controlled press about this issue and the immense double standards of the Jews and Israelis comparing their own policy, both on ethnocentrism and self-interest, to what kind of policy is pushed through their lobby groups on the rest of the world, especially the West, through media, politics, think tanks, and other organizations. We'll also talk about some of the massive amounts of disinformation surrounding World War II history, and especially what happened to Germany, and put this into context in regards to what we see happening today, now, in Palestine. Welcome back, Max. Good talking with you again. How have you been? It's been a couple of years since we last talked. Of course, a lot of things going on, but nonetheless, it's good to have you back. It's good to hear your voice again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Henrik. It's good to be back. Very, very delicate times we're facing at the moment, brother. It's been an interesting ride to get here, for sure.
Yeah, it always is. It's a lot of things going on in the world, of course. The issue of the Jews and the Palestinians. I mean, these situations have occurred, in my estimate, from 1948 and onwards, every few years, with varying degree of intensity, more or less, where we have these extreme violent excursions erupt not every other year or so, but definitely with a frequency that we can monitor all the way back to the beginning, where the Zionists, of course, continue to terrorize the Palestinians, and the media can continue to take the side of Israel. What is your view of the latest thing that has been that we've seen, this wave of terror and everything else? Because you've been down there yourself, you have friends in Gaza at this stage, or down in Palestine. What? Just give it as an estimation of what is going on here, Max.
Well, look, what's going on with the current incursion into Gaza is blatant, open, and the most brutal of ethnic cleansing is exactly what's happening. I actually called this before they went in. As soon as I heard there was a column of tanks and 60,000 troops they were going to send into Gaza Strip, I said, this is ethnic cleansing. And I think they've set the whole thing up very cleverly, Henrik. I think this is why they've destabilized the entire area. And, look, with the whole Arab Spring, I think the whole Arab Spring has been leading towards this. They've destabilized every region in the area so that nobody can get to Gaza at this time. There's no assistance coming for these people, and they're able to ethnically cleanse the whole strip. I've actually tried to create a human shield operation. When I first saw it, I thought, well, let's get all these people that are protesting, like a couple of thousand of us, and let's go down there and be human shields and stop Israel doing what they're doing. But they're just shooting human shields anyway. They're giving no consideration to them. And I've had to step back and realize that even if I did that, there's actually no way to get there. The only way you could really get there would be on a flotilla. And that's if you'd get in, because they've destabilized the entire region around Gaza, and they're just ethnically cleansing the whole strip. There's actually been a huge oil and gas find right off Gaza Strip that Israel wants. And that's one of the reasons they're doing it. But it's the ongoing thing. They just want to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians and turn the whole place into Israel. They've been slowly doing it for years, like 66 years. And it's always been presented to the world as a conflict, like it's two nations at war. This is the way the media portrays it. It's so backwards, you know. What you've got is like you were talking about often on this show, I believe. You've got a bunch of Europeans who came down and stole a country, and they've been ethnically cleansing the local populace ever since for the last 66 years. And what the Palestinians are in Gaza is the last resistance of Palestine, still desperately trying to hold on to their country and get people to notice them, that they're actually people. And they're painted to the world as terrorists, and they're absolutely not. You look at this incursion that Israel has made in there now. It's excuse me, it's horrific. It's the most brutal assault I've ever seen. It's the English or the British Parliament or the Irish Parliament actually summed it up very succinctly. Claire Daly, when she said it was the equivalent of the world's heavyweight champion taking on a newborn baby. This is what we're seeing here, and these are beautiful, gentle people, and they're portrayed as terrorists, and we see Israel go in there and unleash the most brutal wave of terrorism upon these people while claiming they're terrorists and claiming they're defending themselves. It's absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
The video that I showed you before, I mean, a whole suburb in 1 hour, just gone. These are residential buildings, people living in all of these buildings. They're gone. They're telling us the death toll is like 1,000 or something. I would suggest that it's many, many thousands.
Yeah, what was it? They talked about they had some a tap technique, right? They tapped on the ceiling, they said, right? About, was it like 20 seconds before they bombed the shit out of these neighborhoods, you know?
Well, it's a 60-second. They call it a knock on the roof.
Yeah,
60
right.
seconds.
Yeah.
But think about this as well. Oh, we're doing them a favour. We're letting them know we're going to bomb the hell out of their houses. What is this? Okay, hi there. You have 60 seconds to live. Have a nice day. Yeah. That's what they're saying. So that we want you to live the last minute of your life in utter terror. That's really what these knock on the roofs are.
Yeah,
I mean, this is the worst kind of terrorism that I've ever seen. And the weapons that they're using, Henrik, if you look at some of the weapons, is this experimental dime ammunition, these flèche bombs. This dime ammunition literally rips the flesh from your bone. It bears you down to the skeleton. This is being used on children. The Gaza population is over half children. 1.8 million people packed into an area 25 miles long, 4.5 to 5 miles wide, over 900,000 children, and they call this a war. This is not a war. This is ethnic cleansing of the last resistance of Palestine, and it's been so orchestrated and so well contrived. And people really need to step back and see what this is. I mean, I've been screaming from the rooftops about this. This is the most important event since 9/11, this incursion into Gaza, because this is legitimizing ethnic cleansing by a Western superpower. This isn't Rwanda. This isn't Panama. This isn't some Idi Amin government. This is Israel, ethnically cleansing the Palestinian people with the most brutal of weaponry, while the world cheers them on and says, yeah, go kill the terrorist. And it's setting a new precedent. And some of the things that Netanyahu has said in his speeches, what message are we sending if we allow terrorists to believe that they can hide in a civilian population? What is the moral thing to do? And he's saying basically the moral thing to do is to destroy the civilian population because there might be a terrorist in there. This is some of the dangers that I've been saying to people about going off and forming alternate communities. Your little hub of bubble of peace over there, it's not going to last because it's isolated from this community. They'll just come and take you out later. They want you to go and form these alternate communities. We have community here. We need to transform this one by changing the way we interact with each other and paying attention to what's going on in the world. These little alternate systems that people set up, all they got to do is name one of you as a terrorist, and that's it. They'll take out the whole community and say you did it. And they're doing that in Gaza. They're setting the precedent for it right now. It's shifted the goalposts. It's taken things to a whole new level. And something we need to realize is that even with all the riots and protests and people screaming out about this, none of our governments are doing anything about it. Now, this is a brutal and blatant war crime. It's brutal and blatant ethnic cleansing with weapons from nightmares, and our governments are supporting it. They're not saying anything. Whether they're scared of Israel or not, the right thing to do in this matter is to stand up, and they're not doing so. And if you live in a country and your government is supporting Israel's action in Gaza right now, then you have a government that supports ethnic cleansing, and you need to pay attention.
Yeah, I mean, they're certainly expert in ethnic cleansing. I mean, I think it says more about our governments to a certain degree than it does about theirs, and there's so many nuances to this that we can get into and go through with a fine-tooth comb, and we certainly can. But I mean, just look at how the incursions that they claim, that Germany did into Czechoslovakia or Poland or something like that, right? When there was conflicts on the borders between German people in these countries and whatnot, and how the rest of the world basically declared war on Germany at that stage. This is not something that is happening to Israel when they now are ethnically cleansing Palestinians. I think it speaks quite a bit more about our governments and the complacency, but also being complicit in these actions. I think that it speaks of this idea that we are controlled in the Western world by the same forces that are operating Israel. That's what it says to me anyway. And just you spoke about the muscles, the heavyweight champions. The fact is that who are providing those muscles? Well, the United States are inadvertently, Europe are inadvertently, Germany especially through payments and reparations and everything else. So it's like a whole financial guilt-ridden support system that is in place for Israel, and no one dares to criticize them for the risk of being called an anti-Semites. That's what I think we're dealing with here.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and it's the whole Khazar system. That's who it is. I mean, that's where it came from. The Khazar, the whole concept of the Khazars has been quite well known now. I actually did a whole presentation about it a couple of months ago, right around Australia, and let people know what's going on here, who these people are. You know, they're not the original people that are supposed to have the land. We all know this now. A lot of people do. But these people have infiltrated everything. There's Khazars and these Zionist Khazars, and you can't even use the word Jew. I mean, they hide behind the smokescreen of the Jews. And actually, the Semitic Jews in Israel are the most downtrodden people in all of Israel. The Semitic Jews actually lived there in peace for thousands of years. So they hide behind the smokescreen of anti-Semitic. They commit all of these war crimes, and you can't speak out against Israel because you're anti-Semitic. But it's got to the stage where we have to speak out about this. We can't allow these sort of war crimes to continue and allow war crimes, ethnic cleansing, complete corruption and genocide and all of the things they do to hide behind the word anti-Semitic. It's just not acceptable. And really what Israel has done since being formed, it's carried out war and acts of aggression against all of the Semitic races around it since its inception. I mean, the government of Israel is perhaps the most anti-Semitic organization on the planet if you look at its actions. Even what it's done to its own people by the level of programming in the Israeli people, the education system that they're given and the level of programming, these people are literally programmed to hate Arabs. See, everything Israel does.
I know there's two. I mean, my God, I watched, don't mean to cut you off, Max, but I watched a video the other day I brought up when we talked with David Icke, but it's called Defamation. I don't know if you ever saw it. It's from 2009. It was a Jewish guy who did it, but extremely telling. I'm bringing it up again because I hope our audience out there will find it on YouTube. We linked it up a while back, so search for it on our website as well. We have it linked up right there, the whole movie. And just look at the level of programming on these young Jewish children about basically they're led to believe that in the entire rest of the world, and specifically Europe, of course, there's basically just an army of drooling Nazis just waiting to kill Jews, you know? And this intense fear-based kind of programming and frankly the way that they're I don't understand how they can be doing this to their own children as a way of kind of strengthening with group psychology, victimhood and everything else, so that they feel that they are more targeted out there than any other race or group, whatever you want to call them, or religious affiliation. But I think that they're doing it such so that they, in their own survival mechanism type of approach, will do anything that they dare to do in order to, in their view, basically survive and overcome this threat to them that exists out there in the world. And they're using their own children and programming them, themselves within their own group very, very efficiently.
Exactly. They're programmed to believe that the world hates them and that everybody is out to get them, and they're programmed to always be on the defensive. And they're put through military, and they're trained to be very, very brutal. And it's a scary thing, you know. And a lot of what this in Gaza as well, what they're doing, I mean, the sheer brutality that Benjamin Netanyahu is unleashing for all the world to see, you know, like really, really brutal. They just shelled Al-Shifa Hospital yesterday. Every time they shell a hospital, this is a war crime. Every time they shoot an ambulance, this is a war crime. Every time they use fléché bombs and dime ammunition and white phosphorus, these are all war crimes. And there is no public outcry. There was a suggestion that perhaps they may have committed war crimes by the UN. I mean, are they kidding? All they've got to do is look around. So you've got to really see what's going on here. The brutality that they unleash, it's like a culture that hates life. They are so scared that everybody hates them that they hate the Arabs with a vengeance, and they are literally programmed to do it. And everything Israel says is backwards. You know, it's always backwards. You know, they always say the Arabs want to kill all the Jews, but if you look at the actions of the Arabs and the Jews, well, it's the other way around, you know. But again, you go back into the Jew word. It's not the Jews, it's the Zionists. It's all Zionist programming, the whole thing. But you're not allowed to use the Z word because it's anti-Semitic. I mean, it's a hell of a system they've set up. We got to
just see over
credit.
This, you know. Yeah.
You've got to give them credit for this system. It's amazing. But the significance of what's going on in Gaza now is that it is legitimizing ethnic cleansing. And Benjamin Netanyahu has been trying to kickstart World War III for a long time, and he's been trying to get, the whole Zionist culture has been trying to get all the Jews to come back to Israel. They need to bolster them. They need to have this really strong military force that believes the whole world hates them. So with the brutality that they are unleashing on the Gaza Strip, I mean, the anti-Israeli sentiment on the planet at the moment, I mean, these guys are way down at the bottom of the barrel. And you're seeing a lot of hatred for the Jews. You're seeing a lot of anti-Semitism come out. So people that are not related to this, good Jews in other cultures that have been living there in peace for years, are now starting to get flack. So they're trying to they want the world to hate the Jews because they want all the Jews to come back to Israel as part of the plan. They're running through the Revelation script. It's a script. They're running it. You can see so clearly what they're doing here. But this has been a long planned and well orchestrated event. The whole thing, the kidnapping of the 3 youths, the posturing for 10 days when they already knew they were dead, the destabilization of the entire region before they actually went in to do this. It's all been part of the same plan. And like World War III, people are worried about World War III coming along. World War III is already happening. World War III is a war of the elite against the people. I don't even want to call them elite. The Zionists, the controllers, the 1%. It's a war from the 1% against the 99%. And unfortunately, most people are too programmed and too brainwashed to see it. It's like the world's in a state of mass hypnosis. It's quite frightening, really. And there's so many rabbit holes people are going down. It's shocking, Even the free man movement, I'm free now. I know how to do this. I know about the name. I don't have to pay attention to the rest of the world. They don't get it. I'm free. It's ridiculous, It's all programs.
Yeah, we're all part of the world, whether we like it or believe that or not. We are on the chessboard. The world is the chessboard, and if you're not dead, you're going to be on it, and that's just how it is. And we face challenges and situations where we need to deal with the threat that we're faced with, and that certainly is the case. I mean, I think that in terms of speaking out against the actions, I think it's more important now than ever, and I think a lot of people are doing that too. But that there is across the board, recognition that what is happening here in Palestine is not something that is agreed upon by the other, and I'll use the word Jews in this case because if that's how they identify themselves, so be it then. But you can call them Zionists or whatever you want. But the idea here, though, is that these are also people that are dictating, if we look at the Zionist infiltration of our governments, of the morals and the control of the media around the world, then it's a way of life that is dictated to everyone else, which is never, ever applied to the Jews themselves or the Israelis or whatever you want to call it. I mean, for example, we have organizations that argue in terms of how to prevent Jews from marrying outside of their own race, for example, while the rest of the West at least are urged to do everything they can if they want to preserve their own race. They're racists and etc. The double standards in every department, this is just one of them, of course, but in every department when it comes from war and terrorism to morality and ethnicity and everything else. All we have to do, I think, is just to continue to point out these massive double standards that seem to apply to them, but not to everyone else. And I think that this continued, violence against the Palestinians is just a prime example. And I think that if there hasn't been this hatred that you mentioned before directed towards them for what previously has been going on in the world, it certainly is on the ramp out, as you said now. It's almost like they're creating this prediction of theirs, if you will, is actually coming true because of their current behavior,
Well, exactly. It's a plan. It's a planned, orchestrated event. Benjamin Netanyahu wants the Jews around the world to be hated because he wants them have to come back to Israel because it says so in the book. You've got to come back. It's in the book. If you don't come back, it doesn't work. You've got to come back, so I'm going to make you come back. It's all very well orchestrated. And the media, the media bias in this case is unbelievable. It's taken propaganda to a whole new level. It really has. And people are always talking out there. You go to talk to someone on the street and they go, it's because Hamas won't accept the ceasefire. But what is the ceasefire? What are the terms that Israel offers these people? You give up all your weapons and we will continue to keep you in the prison and randomly bomb you and let you die slowly. Or you don't give up your weapons and we'll bomb you now and kill you quickly. That's the choice that they've got. People have to understand what Gaza Strip is. And you can go back to Germany, go back to World War II. It all comes back to World War II. World War II is one of the biggest propaganda exercises ever.
Yes, it is.
It's absolutely incredible. This is another thing that I go through in the presentations I've been doing. And it's absolutely the level of propaganda that we saw in World War II and what we heard post-World War II is phenomenal. It's like it is. Nothing else. No, it's like nothing else. And it's provided the backdrop for all this to be able to occur.
Exactly.
And books I urge people to read. There's a talks, go and look at Mikko Peled's talk, General's Son. I recommend people go and look at that. You'll find it on YouTube. It's a fantastic understanding of what actually happened with the whole division of Palestine and the creation of the State of Israel. I urge people to read a book called The Transfer Agreement by Edwin Black.
Yeah.
Fantastic book. Shows that there was actually, in 1933, that the Zionists had basically crippled the German economy, and Hitler was backed against the wall, and he said, look, I just get out. So I'll honour the Balfour Agreement. I'll fix it all up for you because the Britons didn't do it. So he basically got 60,000 Jews, gave them $100 million, and sent them all down to Palestine.
And then they stabbed him in the back after that.
Exactly. They stabbed him in the back. Well, they stabbed him in the back to do it to begin with. They stabbed Germany in the back in World War I, which is what created the Great Depression, the whole stuff in Germany, which is what created the whole World War II, everything. Yeah. It all comes back to the backstabbing of the Zionists to Germany in World War I. Yeah. And the biggest people who suffered in World War II really was Germany, the German people.
Absolutely.
And the stigma that they've had to deal with since then, the collective guilt of the German population.
And the money and everything.
So unwarranted.
Yeah, and the money and
the
everything.
money they've had to spend.
Endless amounts.
Everything. Yeah. The German people are the ones who truly, truly suffered in World War II.
That's right.
And I consider one of the greatest crimes of World War II to be the bombing of Dresden, which was full of refugees, mainly women and children, and happened after the ceasefire. And that was Winston Churchill went and carpet bombed Dresden and did what Israel is doing to Gaza now.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it was absolutely shocking. So, and some of these things that happened when the Russian troops arrived, like women being raped to death hundreds of times a day, and just horrible stories. Yep. Yes, and the German people that Eisenhower trapped in prison camps and just left there to starve. But what happened in Germany at the start of Germany, something that was a parallel which kind of you can look at Gaza now, was the Warsaw Ghetto. Now, if the Jews are so persecuted from what happened in Germany, they need to remember the Warsaw Ghetto. When Hitler invaded Poland, they got the Jewish quarter, they meshed it all up in barbed wire, and they just left the people there to die, cut them off from everything. And when they started to complain and fight back, they called them terrorists and wiped them all out. And this is exactly what Gaza Strip is. It is Israel's version of the Warsaw Ghetto. These people didn't learn anything from World War II,
Well, exactly. I mean, I have my reservations and a lot of question marks at this stage due to all the propaganda that we heard of what actually happened during and after, just as you said, during the Second World War. But in this case, it's clear that the conditions that are created now in Palestine are, just as you say, are absolutely mimicked. This is the real prison camp.
Exactly.
Gaza is the big concentration camp. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's the world's biggest open-air prison. And if the Warsaw Ghetto situation did indeed happen the way it's told us, the way it's depicted to us, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. I can't make the call. All I know is the history that's been given to me. But if that did actually happen, then why is this race, the people who've set up Israel, now doing exactly to a T the same thing to what the Germans apparently did to them? And not only that, but doing it to 1.8 million people, 900,000 children who've never known any other life but to live in that prison camp. And I went to Gaza Strip in 2012. I went there with Ken O'Keefe, and we just thought, let's go in. Ken went, well, I got the key to the city. Well, I was there on the Mavi Marmara, got the key to the city. We know some people. Hey, let's get in because Egypt won't let us in. Nobody will let us in, so let's just go in anyway. So he had some friends in there, some rebels, and we found this little tunnel, which was not a Hamas tunnel, not any of these official tunnels that you hear about. This was dug by kids, by teenagers. And it was 50 meters underground. It was a tunnel we had to crawl through for most of the tunnel on our hands and knees. It was over, I don't know how long it was. I mean, I couldn't honestly say how long it was. It must have been over a kilometre, could have been a mile, could have been longer. I don't know. We were underground for an hour and a half crawling on our hands and knees. And we started a long way from the border. And we came up in a blown out building in Rafah underneath this collapsed staircase. And we got into Gaza Strip. We got taken to a safe house. Then we went into Gaza, into central Gaza Strip, right near the boat harbour there. And we rented a unit and hung out for 10 days. Now, I ran around Gaza Strip with a video camera. We made videos. We got up on the roof, made videos, and put them on YouTube just to let the world know where we were, that we were in Gaza Strip. And we were holding the video camera in a manner so that you'd know exactly where we were in town, because we wanted everyone to know where we were. We wanted people to know what building we were in, because we'd entered this country illegally. We wanted the world to know, hey, look, we're in Gaza Strip, because, I mean, anything could happen to you, and all it would be on our passport was Egypt. No one would know what happened to us. So we made this video, and we let the people in Gaza know where we were in the manner that we made the video. And then, sure enough, the next day, Hamas come and knocked on the door and came and confiscated our passports, which was an interesting thing. It was an interesting feeling being in Gaza and not having your passport, you know. They came, knocked on the door, they confiscated our passports, and it took us 6 days to get them back. They actually gave us our passports back about an hour and a half before we were to leave. We said to them, look, we've got to have them back tomorrow because we've got a flight out of Cairo the next day. Can we please sort of leave, you know? And they were, you know, they actually, it was interesting because like we'd entered this country illegally. We didn't ask anybody to come in. This is a war zone. I'm running around the streets with a video camera, completely unprotected, okay? This is this hotbed of terrorists, is it, okay? I mean, I've gone in there to have a look for myself because, you know, you go to these places, you get a sanitized version. They show you what you want, what they want you to see. I didn't want that. So Ken and I just snuck in through this tunnel and we just wandered around. He went and saw his friends and sorted stuff out and basically left me to my own devices. I went up to the Ministry of Detainees. I interviewed people there. We went up to the university. We spoke at the university. And when Hamas came and pounded on the door and confiscated our passports, they basically didn't confiscate our passports right then. They pounded on the door and they said, we would like you to come into the Ministry of Interior tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. to discuss your presence in Gaza. And we thought, well, that's pretty good. I mean, they didn't sort of kick the door down and put us up against the wall with Kalashnikovs and run us off to jail for entering their country illegally. So we went in the next morning and we surrendered our passports to them. They held them for 6 days. They gave them back about 12:30 in the afternoon. No, about 11:30 in the morning. They gave us our passports back and they said, you've got to be at the border by 1 because the guys on the border know you're coming and they will let you through. You can't go out across Rafah crossing because Egypt will arrest you because you came in illegally.
Right.
So we've got to send you out through one of our official tunnels. So you've got to be at the border by 1 o'clock because the guys on the morning shift know you're coming and they'll let you through. We told them that it's okay, but the guys on the afternoon shift don't know you're coming and they'll arrest you. So you've got to be there by 1. So it was kind of a rush to get to the border. We got to the border and we're there at one of the official tunnels and they said, well, okay, before you can go through, you've got to come and talk to the head of Hamas border security. So I went and saw him and they've kind of driven us, they've put us back in the car. They've driven us down the road. We've gone into this big compound, looks like a big sort of police prison sort of thing, big high wall, barbed wire. Gone into this compound, then we've gone into an inner compound with another big high wall, barbed wire, and then this big metal gates closed behind us. And we thought, well, this is interesting. Now we're in an inner compound with Hamas. And they're taking us into the office, and there's 5 Hamas in the office, the head of border security and 4 other guys. And they say, okay, we want to know how you got in. We're not going to let you out until you tell us how you got in. We want to know where the tunnel is. And we thought, this is interesting. Here I am being interrogated by Hamas. I'm in a prison compound. So I'm thinking, wonder what's going to happen here. And I'm just talking. We're talking through our interpreter. Ken's doing most of the talking. He's saying, where's the tunnel? We're going, we don't know. It was some little tunnel the kids gave us. We might be able to find it from Egypt, but we wouldn't know here. It's some blown up building. We were disoriented. We'd been underground for an hour and a half after 4 hours sleep and blah, blah, blah. You know, all sorts of stuff.
Yep.
And, you know, one of the Hamas guys comes in and he offers me tea and biscuits, and I'm eating tea and bickies with Hamas while they're asking us where these tunnels are. And they're asking me, is there any information on my computer which would let them know where the tunnels are? And I said, no, there isn't, and they didn't bother looking. I'm thinking, okay. So then then they're saying, okay, after 3 or 4 hours of this in a room, they said, well, okay, look, we're going to take you outside and we're going to put you in a Humvee and we're going to take you into town and you're going to show us, we can retrace your steps to where you came, because we went in a town called a cabin into Gaza, you know. And we're going to take you back into town. You can retrace your steps for where you came back. And we're going, we'll never find it. And by this time, Ken's getting quite belligerent with them. Ken's swearing at them. And we don't know where your effing tunnel is. This is bullshit. We're never going to find it. Rah, you're wasting time. It's getting done. He's been getting quite angry with them. And I'm thinking, this is an interesting way to talk to a terrorist organization, you know. And so they take us out. There's this Humvee, a big black Humvee. They open the doors. They get in the back, and I look in the back and say, well, there's an AK-47 on the back seat. Would you like me to keep that, or would you like to take that in the front with you? And he sort of goes, oh, sorry. And he grabs the AK out of the back seat. Ken and I get in the back seat, and they're driving us around town trying to find this tunnel. Meanwhile, they've sent our luggage off. They've lost our luggage, all sorts of stuff, which was, I figured out later, they're actually searching and trying to find some evidence of who got us in. And all this stuff's happened. We haven't found the tunnel. They've ended up taking us back to the border, back to the first tunnel we were at. And then they walked us through this tunnel. The head of Hamas border security walked us through this tunnel, gave us both back our passports, said, look, sorry for losing your luggage, so we will waive the $100 fee for the tunnel. But it's getting really late now. And we know you've got a driver here, but we don't trust him. We recommend you use one of our Hamas drivers, and he will get you back across through the checkpoints and make sure you get back to Cairo safely, because it's getting dark. You're just a couple of white guys out in the Sinai. You don't want to be out in the Sinai after dark. You know? So he's provided a driver for us to get us back to Cairo safely, and he said, I'll find your luggage and I'll send it on with your other driver. So after we got back to Cairo safely, 2 hours after we arrived, another driver arrived with our lost luggage. Hamas sent it after us to make sure we had our luggage okay. So that was my experience with Hamas, the terrible terrorist organization, okay? They gave me tea and bickies. They provided a driver to get me back to Cairo safely and sent my lost luggage after me. And I broke into their country illegally and ran around with a video camera for 10 days. I think if I broke into Israel illegally and ran around with a video camera for 10 days, I'd probably still be in jail.
Right.
You know, so the people that I met in there were the most beautiful, kindest, generous, down-to-earth people. I built a whole bunch of schoolrooms, school desks for these school children. These children have so much light in their eyes and they're so strong. They're such beautiful people. And every single thing you've been told about Palestinians is wrong. Like I said, with Israel, everything is backwards. Every single thing they say is backwards.
Yep. The
real terrorists in this organization is the Israeli government. And this incursion into Gaza is some of the most brutal terrorism I've ever seen.
What do you make about was it 1973 that the creation of Hamas was actually kind of instigated by Israel, that they helped to spawn the organization, and it was one that kind of got out of control or whatever? Who knows what that is? Even if that's the case in 73, doesn't mean that it's the same people or organization even today. But what do you think about this idea that they try to set up the controlled opposition as a means, of course, to continue to bomb Gaza and other places in Palestine as well, so that they actually can not only create the conditions where they continue to terrorize Palestinians, but also this idea that they can just continue to kind of shoot rockets into the area, basically.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a really, really confusing situation, the whole Hamas thing. I mean, there was sort of the skeleton Hamas was formed quite a while before then, but then they kind of got the power that they've got now from Israel. Israel put them in place as opposition to Fatah. But a lot of the locals kind of joined Hamas. Hamas is kind of made of civilians. These are freedom fighters. It's kind of a legitimate resistance and that's what it turned into. It turned into a legitimate resistance. And there's always talk of the way Hamas seized power through violence in the 2006, 2007 election, 2005, right, somewhere back then. But it wasn't. Hamas didn't seize power by violence. What happened was that Fatah tried to maintain power by violence, and Hamas was forced to use violence to oust them because they wouldn't leave. They refused to leave. That's what actually happened. That's what the people in Gaza told me. Hamas didn't start that problem. It was Fatah that started the problem, and there were Israeli soldiers on every corner at the time, and they did nothing to stop any of it. They just let it all happen. So, but what happened with Hamas? I mean, a vote for Hamas basically was a vote for no checkpoints and no more settlements, a vote for autonomy, a vote for a government that wasn't going to let us be dominated completely by Israel. And so because that happened, Israel said, well, we are all terrorists, because Hamas is a terrorist organization. But they put it in place. They put the whole thing in place to destabilize it, to get rid of Yasser Arafat. Yasser Arafat was a wonderful man. Yasser Arafat was the only true voice for peace in the whole Middle East for years. And no one would ever listen to him. He was painted as a terrorist. And it's all backwards. It's always all backwards. But with Hamas now, I mean, I think there's certain groups that have been infiltrated into Hamas, and certain people that have been infiltrated. I mean, the rockets, it's ridiculous to keep sending these rockets over. They don't do anything. But they're the only weapons that they've got. Yeah, the
Qassam rockets or whatever they're called, right? I mean, that's largely like home-built rockets. I mean, it's not they can't really guide them that well, but I'm always surprised, and please continue on that thread as well, but I'm always surprised that there isn't even more effort to, I'm not saying that they're not fighting back or anything, but even that there is even more. They seem to be tremendously patient with the situation that has occurred, to be honest, to a certain extent. And I'm also surprised that there hasn't been I don't know, more even rich individual Arabs that come to the rescue of Palestine and trying to ship in more weapons and everything else and try to help them out. I don't really know what's going on around in the surrounding regions. I understand that it's locked down in the Gaza Strip, of course, but even from other parts of Palestine that there should be support, you know?
You can't, yeah, no, but you can't get in. You can't get in, Henrik. All of the talk of Iranian rockets and stuff going into Gaza, it's a joke. You can't get anything in. The tunnels that they've got, we're only in Rafah. All of this talk that Israel's got, they're digging tunnels to get to our. This is rubbish. There are no tunnels around there. There's a huge buffer zone around that wall. You would have to dig these in ridiculously long tunnels to get through to Israel, and having no idea where you're going to come up when you come up in Israel. It's not possible for that to occur. The buffer zones are huge. The buffer zone is at least like half a mile from where there's any Palestinians to the wall, and you can't cross it. They just pick you off. If you go out there in the buffer zone, you get too close to the wall, they just shoot you from the guard towers. So you can't get across this area. The only tunnels that were there were at Rafah border, and these were tunnels that were used to bring in much needed supplies, diesel to run the generators, because sometimes there's only electricity for 2 hours a day sometimes. Electricity is off for 2 to 18 hours a day, depending, you know. So when I was there, it was on for about 8 hours a day. You had electricity when I was there. So it's impossible to get all of this stuff in. And to get across the Sinai, I mean, it's checkpoints up the arse, man. There's so many checkpoints across the Sinai to get anything through there. There's no way. I mean, Israel and the Egyptian government, which is completely subservient to Israel through the whole Oslo thing, this is all, I don't know if it was, but I can't remember the name offhand. I'm a bit vague at the moment. I've been at 3 hours sleep a night, but it's such a controlled area, you cannot get this equipment in. So even if people wanted to give them weapons, you can't get them to them.
Right.
And even giving them money, there's a lot of money in Gaza. There's a lot of wealthy people in Gaza. They just don't have anything to spend it on. I mean, you can't even get the basics of concrete or steel or anything that could possibly be used for a weapon. You can't get it. If these people want to rebuild their houses, they have to go out onto the buffer zone and go and collect blown up buildings and repowder the concrete to use to rebuild their buildings when they get blown up. You know?
Yeah. Even from the Egypt side, let's say, because, I mean, obviously, even with, let's say, the Muslim Brotherhood in more position of influence in Egypt, there would be some kind of support from this end of things. But I guess not. We're not seeing that, I guess, right?
I think, like the Muslim Brotherhood, look at what it's done. Look what the result of Morsi and all of this sort of stuff. I think the whole thing was a setup, but the whole Arab Spring was designed to destabilize the region. The Muslim Brotherhood is actually an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood is these Islamic Jihad guys who are actually in Gaza, in Rafah. This is one of the reasons that Israel uses to say, oh, look, there's terrorists. This is why Hamas is a terrorist group. See, we can prove they're a terrorist group because they're giving aid and cover to this group.
Right.
Islamic Jihad. And these are all offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. These are all Egyptians. They're not Palestinians. And they're in there. These are probably half of the guys that are firing all the rockets and stuff, you know. So it's a real mess in there. But the rockets provide the perfect excuse that Israel needs to cry victim. And they look bad. You've got all these big smoke trails.
We don't even know if that's the real deal. That's it. Oh, well, the real deal. I mean, we don't even know if it's who it's shot from. I mean, obviously it would make sense for them to get their boys in place that could do this as a you know, sting operation, as a way to blame it on the Palestinians, while at the same time it might be completely different people actually performing these you know, these rockets going into those parts of Israel. So we don't know who's doing it or what their ideology or allegiances are ultimately.
Exactly. But, you know, my experience in there was beautiful people, and I had no trouble with Hamas at all. And these rockets, they look terrible. Because they're fertilizer packs. They're only powered with fertilizer, so they leave these big, long smoke trails. So they look quite impressive, you know, but they don't do anything. They put a hole in your roof. They put a little hole in your wall. They'll kill you if they hit you on the head, but that's about it. You know, it's a joke, but it's a perfect excuse they need to do what they're doing. But what they're doing is unprecedented. They're leveling whole neighborhoods of people. They're ethnically cleansing the entire Gaza Strip, turning it to rubble. They're shelling hospitals.
Their land has been taken over. This is what any sensible human being would do. They would fight back and resist the takeover of their lands. I mean, I understand them. That's all I can say.
Well, absolutely. You know, it's live on your feet or die on your knees, and that's the point that they've been in. They've been under the siege for 7 years now. They're denied the most basic necessities of life, and they've said, "Well, look, you know, we can't go on like this. We have no dignity." I was speaking to my friend Omar a couple of weeks ago. He said, well, we have no anything. We have no jobs. We have no sea for the fishermen. We have nothing. We have no dignity. If we have no dignity, we prefer to die. We can't stop fighting. We can't live like this. You know?
Do you think it's just about kind of tiring them out in a way so that people will, because it is an endurance test to be part of something like this, but with kind of an endless stream of money and weaponry as Israel has to its disposal, they can just year after year, decade after decade, soon almost a century, continue to keep this kind of tactic up to kind of, I don't know, tire out those who decide to still stay in the Gaza Strip. What do you think?
Well, there won't be anybody left in the Gaza Strip after this incursion if if the world doesn't step in. And that's the problem. They're destroying hospitals. They're destroying everything. They're turning the whole place to rubble. And again, this is a population, 1.8 million people, 4.5 miles to 5 miles wide, 25 miles long. This is a very, very densely populated area. With the amount of damage they've done now, the amount of body parts and with all the water system down and the hospitals all blown up, and there's no way to help these people. No one can get to them. The only thing that's going to happen, it will have to be an international peacekeeping force from public pressure. That's the only thing that's going to save the people in Gaza Strip. Otherwise, there will be no Gaza Strip. It will become a housing estate for Israel.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
That's what we're seeing here. It's blatant ethnic cleansing, Henrik. If we don't stand up, and people have to realize what this is government-approved ethnic cleansing. All of our governments are approving of this. This is showing us the wave of the future. This is we're coming to a town near you if you don't pay attention to this now. And I say that to people,
this
and say,
is coming, yeah, of course. No, but this is happening already. Ethnic cleansing is just it's happening in Europe right now. It's just happening on a long-term plan with replacement level migration. I mean, this is what they do the best. This is what they always been up to, you know, and since 48, since this atrocity occurred overall. And I mean, I think that the reason, again, as I went back to before, why more isn't being done about it is because we have so many complacent people in our Western governments that are allied with these Zionist interests, and that's why we don't see any viable criticism and speaking out against it, you know?
Exactly. I mean, the influences are everywhere, especially through the media. And also, it's been such an ongoing conflict. Gaza. Oh, Israel and Gaza. No, Gaza. That's that hotbed of terrorists. Why don't they just get rid of it? Oh, they are. Excellent. We won't have Gaza in the news anymore. They're sick of hearing about it. They want to know about it. And it's all been set up perfectly. People are just sick of hearing about it, and they think they're all terrorists. And they just think, oh, it's another bombing raid. Oh, they're just bombing Gaza again. They're always bombing Gaza. That's the thing with people. I've had people say to me, oh, well, they're always doing this. So it's just, you know, old news for them. Even if it's new news, it's old news. That's the problem, you see. They're sick of it.
Yeah.
But and the bias of the media, even when I was reading a headline the other day and it said Israel resumes bombing. Resumes shelling raids as Hamas refuses to accept humanitarian ceasefire.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was the headline. Now, resumes as if it's just business as normal. Well, we're just resuming the shelling. It didn't say Israel continues its vicious assault on Gaza Strip, you know, while Hamas calls for truce, because that's what's happening. They're calling for a truce. We don't want a ceasefire and back to the status quo. Leave us in prison now that you've turned the whole place to rubble and leave us cut off from the world. We want a truce. We want you to take the blockade away. We want to live like normal people. We'll stop firing if you'll let us live like normal people. But that isn't what we're getting in the headline.
Yeah.
And that's really what it should be. Israel continues its vicious assault upon Gazan refugees or Palestinian refugees while Hamas calls for truce. That would be a more appropriate headline, but it's spun as Israel resumes shelling while Hamas refuses to accept humanitarian ceasefire. So it's such spin. The level of spin is phenomenal in this case, and people just buy into it. And they're sick of hearing about it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I think the latest headlines I checked out earlier was basically Hamas refused to abide by ceasefire or something like that. Was the latest one I saw. But I mean, it's pretty amazing. I mean, Israel has quite a border wall there, cornering in this whole area in Gaza there, and it's amazing to me as well that we have people, for example, in Europe. I hate to belliger this point quite a bit, but I do want to bring it into the context here so people know what's going on. When we can watch Israel be on one set of behaviors, and then we have a different set of behaviors in other parts of the world. But basically, Israel has a gigantic wall for a border, and then, for example, when Italy wants to try to prevent more immigration, or when the United States wants to try to do it, of course, they're demonized in the press like nothing else. And we can even see, for example, we have organizations actually in Sweden that get taxpayer funding to actually bring in as many immigrants as possible. It's Barbara Specter, another Israelite. She made Aliyah, so she is actually an Israelite Jewish lady, and she's sitting in Stockholm talking quite openly about how she is going to bring in as many immigrants as she can into Europe. And she claims that we have to do this to survive or whatnot. So it's like, go back to Israel and stay behind your wall if that's what you want to do, but don't try to force this upon Europe, you know?
Well, it's a way of dividing and conquering. You see, you'll never get your society to stand up against your government for what it's doing if you've got a divided society. So they present this as multiculturalism, but the way they do it is they make sure it creates friction. They'll bring in a whole bunch of people from one country and put them here, and then they'll create that sector. You know, like you'll get like over here in Australia, you've got the Italian place, and you've got the Chinese place, and you've got the Cambodian people, and they all live in the one suburbs. You know,
yeah.
And when they come to your country, your government gives them all of these subsidies. And so they think, this is great. This government's great. They look after us so well. It's much better here than where I was. But of course, they make sure that the locals feel bad about all that. Oh, look, all these foreigners are coming and they're getting all these subsidies that I don't get. You know, they're taking my jobs. So it creates all this animosity. And when the government starts doing bad stuff, well, you're never going to get a united community because you've got a little world war going on in your community because you've got all these people being subsidized for different things and everyone's jealous of everybody else because of the government set it all up that way.
Yeah.
So you'll never, ever have a united community which will address the corruption in your government because half the people think it's great. It's a lot better than where they came from.
That's right.
And they never. Immigration would be okay if people integrated into the society. I'll go and live in Italy because I want to be Italian. I want to live that way, the way the Italian people do. Yeah, I love this stuff, you know. That's why you want to go and live in another society. You go live in Thailand because you want to live in these little humpies and tumbos and live in the jungle and do this stuff. Why go there and create your white sector in Thailand? Why have a Thailand come to somewhere and create the Thai sector? Why not merge with the culture? If you're going to have that culture and go live in that culture, then be part of that culture. You know, it's I mean, even culture. I mean, that's how this word's been hijacked and been created as something that it is. I mean, to me, culture is art. You know, the art of you, the art of being Swiss, the art of being French. You know, the art of being Australian. It's an expression of art. It's the art of your life, who you are. You know, this is culture, but it's been hijacked to what it is now. This obscene thing that we call culture. You know, so
it's a facsimile, as they always do with everything. They take it over and claim it's something when it isn't. But I mean, you're absolutely right. This is what it's about. It's about creating those kinds of divisions of. I mean, mass immigration is a disease, and multiculturalism is a lie, and it's about creating a global monoculture. Eventually, of course, as you say, in the meantime, now will be these small pockets of everyone, everywhere kind of thing, at least in the Western world. But it's a big lie, and people have to get their eyes open to this idea that it's done for the purposes of creating conflict, creating division, either if that's on ethnic basis or religious or cultural basis. But they have to realize that it's done against their own, good intentions, basically.
Oh, it is. Absolutely, it is. And it's always presented as multiculturalism is good. It means all appreciating each other's cultures. Yeah, it is. But let's leave each other's cultures in their respective countries so that we can go and enjoy that around the world.
Yep,
we want to travel the world. Everywhere you go, it's the same as everywhere else. If people like coming here, let's turn it into everywhere else. So that everywhere you go, it's the same. I mean, I've traveled, and everywhere I go, there's the same cafes, there's the same little sidewalks, it's all the same.
Yeah,
it's just this whole homogenized reality,
corporate culture. Yeah,
exactly. And everybody loses their own reality and their own experience of their own country, and who they are. They lose their identity through this, and you just become this thing and this homogenized species, and that's what it's all about. And it creates all of this division, and then they can just start tightening the strings, tightening the purse strings, making things get harder and harder, and start creating so that, okay, these guys are taking my jobs and these guys are taking, and we'll end up killing each other. You know what I mean? So we do it ourselves, and they can just sit at the top and pull all the strings.
Yeah.
And you set all of these cultures against each other. We all start screaming at each other, and then you create things like they're doing in Gaza now. I mean, it's all leading to this terrible reality, and people just aren't noticing. And they should, because I think Gaza, like I said, I think this is the most important event since 9/11. This incursion into Gaza now, this open slather ethnic cleansing with the weapons of nightmares right there for the world to see. This has taken things to a new level. This is showing what they can do and will do if you complain about them. This is what they will do if you set up your little alternate community and you dare speak out against the government. You might be a terrorist, and this is what we do to terrorists. Terrorists can't hide in civilian positions. We'll just take out the whole country.
Oh, that's what they'll do. This is the future urban warfare, you know. But and you're right, of course. This total insanity on all this level of all this globalism and everything, and the war and everything we're seeing needs to stop. But Max, let's just take a quick little break here, and then we'll pick right up after that. I wanted to talk more, of course, about your trips down to Gaza, what can be done, some of the previous cases that we've seen with the flotilla and Rachel Corrie and all these other atrocities that have occurred, and where to go from here. I want to get you more on your take on Arab Spring and actually the kind of destabilization of the region in all. So much more to get into and talk about. But give our audience a reminder of your website where people can go to hear more of your stuff. And then you're taking off soon as well, you said. Give us where are you heading again, Max? Remind us.
Well, I'm going to the Boom Festival in Portugal. I've got to speak there next week between the 6th of August or the 4th of August and the 10th of August. I'll be speaking sometime there. Then I'm speaking somewhere in Lewis in England. I'm speaking, I think I'm doing a gig in Cornwall. I'm doing a few in the UK. I'm speaking at the Entheon Science conference in Berlin, which I think is the 12th or 13th of September. And I'm speaking at the Open Mind conference in Copenhagen on around the 20th of September, I think, as well. There might be some other gigs in Croatia and a few things there as well. Might even get to see you, Henrik. You never know.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to see if I can make it to the Open Mind conference in Copenhagen. So that would be nice, but I don't know how the schedule looks at that time, but we'll see what is happening in September. But that's some good events to check out. Give us your website as well, Max.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the crowhouse.com is my website. There's also a website called gazashield.com if you'd like to sign up to there. If this hostilities do cease, well, I would like to take a team in there to help clean up. I don't know whether we're going to be able to, but it would be great if anybody wants to help with that to sign up to gazashield.com, and we'll just see where we go with it. So, yeah, the crowhouse.com, gazashield.com.
All right, good stuff. That's the website. We'll have those linked up, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with us. Max, we'll be right back after this short break. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll return after a short break here to talk more with Max Igan about his time when he visited the Gaza Strip and, of course, what is happening down there right now and what can be done to bring more attention to this issue, to show the world the policy of Israel. We'll talk more about Zionist-controlled media, previous atrocities like what happened to American Rachel Corrie, who was crushed by Israeli bulldozers. We also talk about the Gaza flotilla and the many people that were murdered during this trip. We continue to talk about the huge problem of Christian Zionism, who continues to support Israel no matter what. This is on the basis of religious programming, and that these people are, according to a book they themselves wrote, a people chosen by their God. Much more is coming up with Max Igan. Don't miss it. We'll continue in the second hour with our conversation in our members area, redicemembers.com, where we have all our shows archived in full. We do not have commercial interruptions or ads, so to continue to listen, please sign up for a membership and get full access to our vast archives. The majority of what we do is for free, but we do have a lot for you in the member section as well. We have, of course, RSS feeds and instructions on how to get the full show to your smartphone or other devices. You can subscribe with iTunes or other podcast apps and readers. We are also working on a new and much needed updated app design right now. And of course, you'll get access to all our videos, films, and other material. redicemembers.com. We'll speak to you there. Thank you for staying with us. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking with Max Igan from crowhouse.com and his other website, gazashield.com. Head on over there and check that out as well. We're talking about the atrocities in Palestine, the Gaza Strip in particular, but also the mentality of of Israel and everything else in related topics, of course, of basically the disease of Zionism and this kind of globalism that we're faced with here, with corporate culture and cultural Marxism and everything else that we've been slaves to in the last 50 years or so. But we have much more to discuss here, Max, and I want to ask you a little bit more about some of the things that we've seen in the past in terms of trying to raise awareness about the situation in Gaza and some of the things that have happened to some of the people that have gone down there. I mean, you mentioned that yourself. There's a clear-cut possibility that you when you put yourself in this situation, you can definitely be taken out. We know about some of the things pertaining to Rachel Corrie, the whole flotilla, scandal, but it really shows that even in these very, very upfront and brutal cases where people are flat out murdered, it still seems to be not enough of attention and focus to kind of cause a major protest, against it, to actually make a dent in it. My question was always, maybe this is due to the fact that we have a lot of pro-Zionists in charge of our media, and you actually still haven't managed to kind of get a real movement going and focus on it. Why do you think this is, Max?
Oh, it is absolutely Zionist-controlled media. I mean, what I was talking about before, the spin on the headlines, it's so spun. It's incredible. And looking at Rachel Corrie, I mean, the death of Rachel Corrie was an utter tragedy. And this was what they do. I mean, this is how their settlement program works. People think, oh, these settlements, these aren't little settlements. They think settlements are a little log cabin or something. No, these are big apartment blocks that they build on Palestinian land. And Rachel Corrie was actually standing up for a doctor, standing at the front of a doctor's house. A doctor and his children live in this house. They'd sort of become her adopted family in Gaza, and they just ran her down. Now, this is what a vote for Hamas stood against, this type of brutality that was being directed at the Palestinian people. If the people in Gaza hadn't have voted for Hamas, then there probably would be no Gaza. It would have all become settlements by now, and everyone would have been sent to the West Bank, or be in jail, because if you fight back, you're a terrorist. We're going to come and steal everything from you, and if you fight back, you're a terrorist. That's basically what's been going on in Palestine for 66 years. And people are just sick of hearing about it, because it's always portrayed as a war between Israel and Palestine. But Israel and Palestine is the same country. It's not one country, and it's presented as a civil war then, but it's not. It's land theft and ethnic cleansing by people who have no claim to the land, based on this whole scenario that's been created through World War II. And the way they get away with it and the way they continue it is because the people in Israel, the Jewish people, have been trained and kind of had their faith and their religion hijacked and been taught that the world hates them. And so they've become very, very brutal towards the rest of the world, and they're currently in a state of defending themselves all the time, but there's nothing there to defend themselves against. The world doesn't hate them. It hates them by their actions because they think the world hates them. They attack everybody. It's an incredible program that's running here, and it's in control of so much. It's been so well set up and so well orchestrated. But the thing is, it's a whole global arm, and everyone's being played, Henrik. Everybody's being played. The Jewish people are being played. The people of Israel are being played just as much as anybody else, because the controlling hand doesn't care about them. They're just a mechanism that's being used to do all of this. It's such a game, but I think, I don't know, people are beginning to wake up and see it. But with the matter of Gaza, I mean, some of the things that have happened, like the flotilla. Ken was on the flotilla that went in there, the Mavi Marmara. There was like 9 people shot, I think, 9 people killed. Ken did a week in jail, in an Israeli jail, over that. We've seen the brutality of these people firsthand. We've seen what they can do. And the mentality, I mean, the programming, the level of programming. Look at what they did to that Palestinian teenage boy in response to those murders. They took that poor young boy and they tortured him. They poured petrol down his throat and set him on fire. I mean, this boy had nothing to do with these other 3 youths that got kidnapped. But what sort of a culture would do that, would even think of doing that to an innocent teenage boy? This is not normal behavior. There were 3 Palestinian boys that were machine gunned at an Israeli checkpoint 2 weeks before the 3 Israeli boys went missing. We didn't see any Palestinians kidnapping Jews and pouring petrol down their throat. We didn't see Hamas start carpet bombing Israel. We didn't see them whip up any type of racial storm or anything. They just mourned their lost children because they're used to losing so many.
That's amazing to me. I mean, I'm amazed that there isn't more suicide bombings to avenge some of this behavior. As a kind of a sentiment I said before, there's like that there isn't more just people completely just freaking out and just doing as much damage as they can.
Well, exactly. These, after what's been done to the Arab world, these people have showed an incredible amount of restraint, especially the people in Palestine, because they're such kind people. They are really, really kind people. And I was amazed at the level of kindness and the level of pureness in these people. These are the true people from the land. They really are, And if you really believe in such things, if you really believe in religion, and you really believe in the whole story of Christ and the whole Son of God and all of this sort of stuff, and you believe in that whole Jewish line and what happened in the teachings of Christ. This is one of the things that Christians support Israel so much, but they don't look at the picture.
Yeah.
If you really believe in all of that stuff, well, there's a quote by a man called Martin Buber, who works at the Hebrew University, and he says, "Bring me a Palestinian Christian from Galilee, and I will show you the purest Jewish blood on the planet." Because that was the actual line that Christ was supposed to come from. Christ was a Palestinian Jew, and the line that came from his teachings, would have been the Christians of Palestine, the Palestinian Christians. And there's actually a lot of Christians in Gaza Strip. Why don't the Christians in America understand that it isn't just these Muslim terrorists? There's a whole bunch of Christians in Gaza Strip as well. I went to one building. It was on the corner of a block. On a corner of a block, there was one door on the corner, big door, and you walk down the left aisle to go to the mosque and the right aisle to go to the church, and they pray together. There's no animosity between these people. There's a large Christian population in Gaza as well, and you never hear about that. And if these people really do believe in all that stuff, why don't they look at who the original people of the land actually are? Because it's these guys in Gaza and these guys in West Bank, and that's who you should be standing up for if you really believe all that stuff, because that's the actual line.
Right, right.
It's these guys that have come down, they've hijacked it. So it's a huge setup,
I've seen some of the footage, a couple of different videos of various people being down in Israel, and I've seen, at least in these videos, I think one was Thoreau. What's his first name? Was it Justin or whatever? He did a pretty good, I think he's from Canada, he did a pretty good job going down and showing how some of the Christians that travel down to Israel, how they are treated, and the way that they were considered to be filthy and unclean. They could be part of, for example, these are Christians, they're there they want to help the Jewish people, right? It's like a spiritual and religious experience for them. But it was something with the grapes, just a small example here, they were making wine, but they were not allowed, the Christians were not allowed to carry the barrels of the grape beyond a further point within the vinery, whatever you call it, vineyard, because they were seen as unclean. And there's a couple of other these examples as well where Christians are around in the area, and there seems to be a high resentment for that. Now, if that's across the board, I don't know, but I've definitely seen some of that footage, and I was really surprised that I think there's a lot of Christians don't understand this. A lot of the Christian pro-Zionists don't understand that there is a huge animosity as well towards, Christians. But if they knew some of this stuff, I think that hopefully in a way, their sentiments would begin to change, because at least from the American perspective, I don't know how it is in other parts of the world, but the Christian Zionist movement is a huge supporter and a money and a cash cow for Israel, of course, which only adds to this issue and to this problem.
Exactly. See, I think that, this is why I think it all goes back to who these people actually are and whether it may be a genetic thing. Because the Semitic Jews that I've met and the Semitic Jews that are in Israel, a lot of these are very good people. There's a lot of them who hate Zionism, who want things to go back to the way they were, who don't respect the state of Israel's existence, say it shouldn't exist at all. It should have just remained the Holy Land that existed within Palestine for thousands of years, the way it always had been. And so you've got to look at this line. Why would all these Zionist Christians really exist when this whole thing is so much against both Judaism and Christianity and Islam? It's against all of them, the main monotheistic religions. It's kind of its own life form, Zionism. So where does it come from? I think it comes from these Khazars, this Khazar line. If you look at the history of the Khazar race and the Khazarian Empire, they're a very, very warlike race. I can't remember his name, but I started with a B. Like I said, I'm a bit vague today. But the Khazar king actually used to hire out mercenaries to other countries that were having wars. And if you got the Khazar army working for you, you didn't expect to take any prisoners. These were really, really brutal people, absolutely brutal. They'd rape, pillage, and plunder everywhere that they went. and you couldn't get them out. They were embedded like a tick. They were a very, very long-running empire, So I think it's just this line. I don't know. These are very, very brutal people. And they have been brutal people through history, and I think they've gone out and they've infiltrated everything. Like when the Khazarian Empire kind of dissolved, which was around about a century ago or something. It started around about 600 or about 740. I think they converted to Judaism, and they lasted till about 900 or 1100 or somewhere around there. And they kind of spread out across Europe from then. This all became the Jews of Poland and all of this sort of stuff. But the thing is, they'd convinced themselves within a couple of generations that they actually were the descendants of King David. That's the thing. When you look at the Israeli people, the Israeli education system, when they tell you that there was never a Palestine, that it's all, and all of the stuff that they tell you is completely false history that they tell you, they're not lying to you. They truly believe this 100%. And they believe that the world does hate them. They're fully programmed. It's the most programmed culture imaginable, and it's got a completely different history to the rest of the world. And they're so paranoid about it, and they're so intent on doing this, that they've gone out and infiltrated all of our countries, and now they're teaching the rest of the world that false history. And the rest of the world just going along with it because they don't know. They just do what the TV says. It's amazing. It's amazing what's happening. But, that's how it's kind of all been done. So that's who I think it is. I think it's the Khazars, because the Semitic Jews don't want this, and the Semitic Jews really aren't like this. And all of this Muslim extremism, this isn't Muslim, this isn't Islam. All the Christian extremism isn't the teachings of Christ, and all the stuff that Israel is now doing to Palestine, it's not the teachings of Judaism. So it's all been hijacked by these Khazars,
Yeah, Arthur Kessler, the 13th Tribe. I've seen some of their arguments, both for and against it. And at this stage, I'm not certain about any of it. This is more for me personally to look into and everything else. But I think, nonetheless, despite all of that, kind of talked with David Icke a little bit about that last time he was on here, and we kind of talk. The question is how much it matters, for them individually per se, even if it happens to be a genetic thing, unless of course you have an idea that there are differences on that basis alone, which makes it more interesting then. But what I'm getting at is that if it is a religious ideology per se that you are attached to and attracted to and are supporter of, then it doesn't really matter that much if you happen to share genetics or not, if you happen to be Semitic, if you have interbred with Europeans so much so that now you have, mainly European DNA, but you still call yourself, Jewish, what have you. I think to me, it seems to be anyway, more about the adaptation of the mindset and perhaps the religious aspect, kind of play into this as well. But as long as the acceptance of the behavior, let's say, of Israel, or that you defend Israel or whatever they do because they happen to be Jewish, and my God, you can't speak up against the Jews or whatever, then that is the problem. I think we need even more people to speak up against Israel, and specifically people that are of the Jewish faith. I think the more that happens, the better it is, and even if that means that it creates division within their ranks, that's the better, I think, in that regard. And that will be an internal issue that they have to deal with, that the behavior of what Israel is doing right now, it's not something that should be accepted across the board. And I'm not saying that it is either, but I think that it would be even more beneficial if more and more people were speaking out about this, especially if they were Jewish, Max.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. See, that's one of the hard things to get across to people is that speaking out against Zionism is not anti-Semitic. It's not speaking out against Jews, because Zionism is actually very, very anti-Semitic. It really is. And with what the Zionist government is doing, it's going to bring about the implosion of the state of Israel. If you really care about Israel, then you should really look at who's running it and what it's doing. Because, as I was saying, the whole culture and faith has been hijacked with this false history with which people are taught to hate and taught that everybody is a threat to them. And it's not true. Nobody's a threat to anybody else. It's all created, and it's all fiction, and it's all programming. That's the problem. These people have had their faith and their country hijacked, and to a large degree so have many other people. But there are still pockets of purity left, which is what you'll find in Palestine, which is why they're so intent on wiping it out so publicly.
Yeah.
But everybody's got to understand that the whole world has been hijacked by something that is not what it seems. And really, I mean, if you look at the whole thing, the whole Vatican system, the 3 city-states, these big attack dogs rise in different places all the time, whichever suits the agenda. however it works, And you look at how all this has been orchestrated. They destabilize the entire area. Then they started ethnically cleansing Gaza. They shoot down a few planes to keep you distracted. All of this war posturing with Ukraine, all of this sort of stuff. I mean, it's all theatre for the masses. It's all about depopulation. They don't care where it is. I mean, if there was a war in Ukraine and all of this sort of stuff, they don't care. They just want to send your children to a place so they can all kill each other. That's what it's all about. Kill as many people as possible and get them to do it to each other. Just cook up all these things, shoot down a few planes, do this, do that, whatever. Let's just kill lots of people. And that's what they're doing, It's all theatre, And nobody wants war. I don't know anybody from any country who wants war. The governments cook all this stuff up and they send your kids off to kill each other. Wake up, people.
Yeah, people line up. Exactly. They send their kids. I mean, look at just, again, the military support of all these other, countries, of course, that are, this is done by Western countries. And now, of course, they are getting a lot of blame of this, while in effect, our governments are occupied by those people who do not have our interests, at heart either. So it's absolute mayhem and chaos across the board in that regard. But what do you think about the territory itself then, Max? I mean, if we look at Palestine and why this area, because as we know, I mean, there were organized Jewish migration on the proposition to Argentina for a while, for example, the Andinian plan. And there's been other kind of suggested territories when Theodor Herzl kicked off the Zionist movement. And they said, well, we might be able to do it over here. We might be able to do it over here. If it's a biblical story that's based on a lie, largely, do you think that the value of the land and the territory itself actually means something? Does it really, or is it just it just become a symbol of what they want to keep and preserve for themselves, which in this case is a homeland? But I guess in your case, you mentioned that they recently discovered some oil there, so that would point in a different direction, I guess, right?
Well, it's a huge oil and gas field just off the shore of Gaza. That's why this incursion's being done now. I mean, that's why Egypt is backing off as well. That's why Egypt's letting them do it, because a lot of it's in Egyptian waters as well. It's in the corner of the Mediterranean there, I mean, Gaza's the Mediterranean. People don't understand this. This is the Mediterranean. This is paradise, man. When I went there, the energy is incredible. I mean, there's something very, very special about Gaza Strip. There's this incredible power there. Maybe a lot of it's from the people, but it's an incredible place. I'd live there in a minute. I was actually supposed to be in there now for Ramadan. I was supposed to get in there in July, and I was waiting for my ticket to boom, and I was waiting to get approval for entry into Gaza, and the people that were flying me to Europe, it was the ticket prices are going up and up, and I'm thinking, well, it doesn't look like I'm going to get entry to get in there now, because I was thinking maybe they could just fly me from Cairo to Portugal, it'd be a lot cheaper. But I couldn't get into Gaza, so I just said, okay, well, you might as well book the ticket. So they did, and they sent me the ticket, and then 4 days later I got approval to enter into Gaza. So there was that 4-day window. Otherwise I would have actually been in there now, and I was supposed to be there for Ramadan. That's another thing. This whole raid has been done in Ramadan. This is like Christmas for the Muslims.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So they really, really plan to do as much as they can. I mean, Israel's been trying to kickstart World War III for a long time. And that's the problem, everybody's against this, but America's still sitting there backing Israel. And if any other Arab nation steps in to help Palestine, America will come to the party, and then they also come to the party. And this is another thing that they're trying to do. They just want to kill as many people as possible, as violently as possible. And this is what they do, But
yeah. No, it's unfortunate, but it's true. Maybe a little bit later here we can talk a little bit more about what you think could be some of the things of trying to kind of change the tide of this and how things are a little bit. I think it's increasingly important that people begin to talk about it, speak out about it, inform themselves about it, spread the word about it. I think that definitely do. I mean, these kinds of topics we're talking about now has definitely gone out there even more so in the last I'd say 2-3 years. Much more so, which is a really positive spin on it. But one thing, of course, I wanted to discuss before we go there is just a lot of this, the problem that has arisen here is due to a people that is largely without a homeland, right? And this idea that they need a state to belong and a place to be, right?
Exactly. See, if you look at and this is another thing which suggests this is Khazars. There's a lot of these people and they don't live anywhere, and they don't have a country. They were sort of kicked out, and nowhere else would have worked. No other piece of land would have worked, because this has got a biblical story attached to it, as you said. This gives a legitimacy to what they're doing. It's our land. God said it was. We were exiled, and now we're coming back,
Yeah.
The right of return. See, they've created all of these things, the right of return, anti-Semitism, the Holocaust, keywords, all of these things, and all these. What do you mean right of return? What is this right of return? Is there a right of return for the Palestinians? Is there a right of return for the Australian Aboriginal? Maybe there's a right of return for me. My family came here from England as prisoners when they were sent. Maybe I can go back and take England over. Is there a right of return for my family to do that? Is there a right of return for anybody to go back to where their bloodline originated from? When did this happen? And why did it happen? Why is it only for one people? It's for one people because of the Holocaust. What happened with all that then? Something else that's really interested me is the fact that there's a book you can get by a man called Martin Brian Riggs or something like that. I'll just find what's his name? Brian Mark Rigg. And it's called Hitler's Jewish Soldiers, the untold story of Nazi radical laws and men of Jewish descent in the German military. There were actually 100,000 Jewish soldiers in Hitler's army. There were 10 Jewish generals and 1 Jewish field marshal in Hitler's army. So perhaps these are the ones that actually ran the camps and things and set this whole thing up. Perhaps these were Khazar Jews, and perhaps these are the ones who did all the damage. Perhaps they had to do this to make sure there were people that remembered this terrible stuff that happened. They had to create all of this stuff to create what they're doing now. And it all rides on the back of this Holocaust, which has allowed all of this to happen. So. You've got to look at how this has been done.
What happens?
I wonder who orchestrated
Max,
it.
What happens if it turns out that there are even more lies behind these stories than we're led to believe? I mean, that would be just an amazing place, of course, to end up in terms of realization for a lot of people. But the fact is, there is a lot of people that have done investigations into this, none the least people like David Cole and others, of course, where a lot of it seems to have been massive amounts of Soviet and Allied propaganda after the war, reconstructions and bridging all of this stuff together as a way of legitimizing not only the destruction of Germany that we talked about before, but also consequently everything that has happened when it comes to Israel and everything. I'm just posing the question here, what if then this is all hinged on a massive lie? What happens and how does that change the story if it's true what people like David Cole is saying, for example, that there's a lot of lies surrounding the Holocaust? How does that change the picture?
It changes everything. But even if the Holocaust happened the way they said, even if 6 million Jews died, and I don't know whether they did or didn't, because I'm not a Holocaust investigator, and it's a dangerous area to go to, especially in Europe.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you can't even
end up in jail. Exactly. Yeah, and that's why I wanted to look into it. When I heard that, I was like, "What the hell? Are you kidding? Is this the only historical event you're not allowed to research? You cannot be in jail for doing it, for questioning it?"
Well, all I'm saying is, even if it happened the way we're told, even if everything in Schindler's List is true, there were soldiers who were running these camps and soldiers who were doing all of this. And what part did the 100,000 who I suspect were Khazar Jews in Hitler's army play in this? Whereabouts were they stationed during the war? Were they near any of these areas? Were they any of the people who gathered up, any of the people who suffered in the camps? Were they the ones running the camps? Who knows? What were these doing? What were these people doing in Hitler's army? If Hitler was out to exterminate Jews, why was there 100,000 of them on his payroll?
Well, I don't think it was because he was trying to exterminate the Jews. Where's the paperwork for that? There's no one has found any paperwork. They were meticulously documenting culture, the Germans, and no one has actually ever found anything like that.
Exactly, but what they have found paperwork to prove is that there were 60,000 Jews who were rounded up and loaded onto trains and sent down to Palestine in 1933.
Right, that's true.
And you talk to a lot of people say, "Oh no, we remember rounding up Jews and putting them on trains." Well, I'm not saying that they didn't, but where were they going? Were they going to death camps or were they going to Palestine? Because there's proof here that says a whole bunch of them went to Palestine. All I'm asking for is for you to give me something similar. So there's a lot of questions.
A lot of questions, exactly.
Cui bono, when you look at all of this and you look at the result of all of this and the state that the world's in now, and you realise that we could well have been hoodwinked in far more ways than we imagine. History is written by the winners. And,
yes.
You notice if you look back through history, it's incredible how the good guys always won. You see that? Isn't it amazing?
Exactly. I mean, I just don't understand why good, sensible people and truth seekers. And again, I'm not making any kind of clear cut assertions at this point in regards to anything. I just have a lot of question marks at this point. That's all I'm doing here. But I just don't understand why good so-called truth-seeking people are great in discovering conspiracies, see the lies in everything that we have seen going on in the world, except on the question when it comes to Germany and what happened during the Second World War. There, the Hollywood version is 100% correct, and there's nothing about that you're allowed to question. Otherwise, you're a Nazi who wants to kill 6 million Jews. So.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting setup that's going here. I think one of the greatest unmentioned crimes of World War II was actually the bombing of Dresden, which happened after the ceasefire, which was commanded by Winston Churchill. Dresden was a town that was swollen to the brim with refugees, mainly women and children who'd escaped from Berlin. Because, of course, when peace was declared or ceasefire was declared or the end of the war was declared, the first thing that happened was that Berlin got flooded by Russian troops who looted the entire town and raped every woman they could find. Some women were raped to death up to 100 times a day by soldiers. Any woman aged between 8 and 80 was a target, and many of these people fled with their children to Dresden. And Dresden was swollen to the brim to about 200,000 people. It had about 25,000, I think, and it was swollen to about 200,000, and then Winston Churchill ordered it to be carpet bombed, and they bombed it for 3 days and reduced it to rubble and killed about 200,000 people. According to Allied figures, they killed 20,000 people. According to German figures, they killed over 200,000.
Yeah, that's right.
This was after the war, and this was only refugees.
Yeah, there was no military targets in Dresden or anything like that. It was a largely a beautiful city with a lot of archives and museums and things like that. It was a psychological impact that they wanted to do on the German people with this.
Absolutely. It was women and children, refugees, and it was after the end of the war. And it was one of the most brutal and horrific slaughters of innocents that ever happened. And the women of Berlin at the end of the war were the people who suffered most in World War II. I mean, sure, a lot of bad stuff happened in the camps, but what the salvation, the people who came in to save you did was unforgivable. Absolutely unforgivable. What the Allied forces did to Germany was unforgivable. Yeah,
that was after they've cleaned the pool at the concentration camp. But I've actually heard from people who justify this set of behaviors as they believe that the German people, the children and the women deserve this. It's just amazing that the cruelty and the unhuman behavior that I've heard from people here, where they seem to justify violence because they have a belief at this stage, because they haven't investigated the true story of what actually happened during the war. I mean, all of this, we have to remember, all of this stuff was stuff that came out later. It seems like they think that all the Germans, I mean, again, even if we take the official story as we're given them about the Second World War and what actually happened there, if we take that official story, which I believe is largely lies, but let's just assume that it happened that way, then this is not something that was known during the wartime. This is something that was, pieces that they presented afterwards and kind of laid this puzzle for us, meaning that there wasn't some kind of mass psychosis from the German people where they all just lined up and took part in this kind of in the concentration camp, story and everything else. So it's I think we're terribly blinded when it comes to the accuracy of what actually happened here, and even the idea that it's wartime in itself, and a lot of people all over the place, suffered, and they were starved to death. There were sanctions put on Germany, and even the camps in itself, of course, a lot of people alone would have starved to death. I mean, there's even the typhus problem alone killed, several 100,000 people. That's even admitted,
Oh, absolutely. Look, there's no winners in war, and there are no good sides and bad sides in war, and the people are the ones who suffer. And some of the people who suffered most in World War II were the, the people of Germany, and they suffered after World War One. They suffered through from World War One to World War Two. They suffered through World War Two, and they were blamed for everything. And it really wasn't them. Whether Hitler was a bad guy or not, it wasn't the fault of the German people. Anything that happened in World War Two was not the fault of the German people. And they've been persecuted and suffered ever since. And it's this slaughtering of innocents that is so justified in war because of what your leader did. You know, it's just the same as what's going on in Palestine now, the slaughter of innocents. It's just justified. Nobody cares because these are just terrorists because Israel says so.
Right.
Nobody cares, you know. Yeah. And even if it turned to the stage where the whole world turned against Israel, then they would justify the killing of ordinary Jews and ordinary Israelis who had nothing to do with it as well, you know, because that's just the way people have been trained to think. It's the way they've been trained to react. It justifies all of this. You know, if someone commits an atrocity, then we can blame the entire people. It's this subtle racism that's portrayed in every aspect of our lives. Collective punishment and subtle racism. We're taught not to be racist. We're taught to be multicultural, but we're always fed racism all the time. Everything is racism. War is racism. I mean, for God's sake, of course it is. Any war is racist. How can it not be? You know. So when you look at all the wars on the planet. So, but everything, you know, it's justifiable wholesale slaughter of innocents, and it's all done through this. I don't know. It's sick, Henrik. It's hard to imagine where we could go from here, you know, if people up to what's happening. And I think we're really at a turning point now. I mean, I've been trying to convince people and talk to people about energy and see, this is what it's all about as well. I mean, ultimately it all comes down to us. It's why aren't we standing up to our governments? It's because of fear, because we don't understand ourselves. We don't know who we are. So we don't approach reality from the right perspective. We don't approach each other from the right perspective. Now, you can come back down to these spiritual understandings which give you the strength to stand up and do what you and I are doing, to stand up and actually speak out about this and call these people accountable for their actions. Because that's the only thing that's going to save the people in Gaza Strip is if we all step into our power right now and demand that action is taken. And if it isn't, we'll take it ourselves. Yeah. And you've got to understand with the mentality of the soldiers in Israel, they've got to stop doing this. Stop bombing these people because you're doing so much damage to your own country and your own image and everything that Israel should be. You can't have this. You can't just completely eliminate another country. There can't even ever be a two-state solution for the Israel-Palestine problem. It's got to be one state. It's got to be one state, which is a democratic, fair state, not an apartheid state, which is what it is now. How much they say it isn't, it absolutely is. I mean, just the fact that this ghetto exists is apartheid. Just the fact that there's a wall around the West Bank, this is apartheid. How can you have a wall around a place and say it isn't apartheid? It's ridiculous, you know.
You know, so, I think you're absolutely right when you say that it's actually about us. It's not about them in that regard. We have been, I think we've been so domesticated, so weakened to a certain extent, and specifically the men in our society, that we've been basically taught just to follow orders from childhood and up, and this has caused tremendous amounts of issues and problems. I mean, I think there is something to say for a positive use of violence from righteousness, meaning that if we could, I mean, we've been so set back that something that 1,000 years ago was self-evident among the good men in the tribe, that if you got a psychotic maniac in charge of your tribe, they band together and they took him out, or they ousted him from the community or from the tribe or whatever, because they knew that this is a man who's going to lead us all to ruin and it's not going to work. It was for the betterment of all. I think that there is a positive aspect to violence and this idea of action and doing something about it. Today we're in such a far removed space from everything that has to do with that kind of natural order that exists, that we were connected with a long time ago. And we're basically passive. We're sitting around waiting. We don't dare enough to take risks. People are not, they're even afraid of talking about it. That's how far it's gone, Max. That people are afraid by words that is going to be used against them, and they cower down because of that. It's like we are no longer men. We've been turned into something else. And I think the world, if they need anything right now, it is the men of this world to stand up and actually change the scenario, and for good people to do something about it, you know?
Yeah, we need to get back to the divine masculine. We've been all turned into these fluffy little things, you know. Put down your Eckhart Tolle book, folks. It's not a good thing.
Yeah, I know.
But again, even when we want to address this, we tend to address it country by country. Even with what we're doing now, with seeing what's going on in Gaza, we'll attack Israel. We'll want to stop Israel. But really, the people of Israel need to understand that they've been programmed into hating. You don't go and use these type of dime ammunitions and these type of exotic weapons and white phosphorus and all this stuff. You don't drop that on people. If I was in the army and he gave me some dime ammunition and told me I had to use this on civilians, I'd turn around and smash him in the face with my rifle butt, drag him off to the nearest police station and say, this guy's a psychopath. And then I'd find out who invented the dime ammunition and have him put it in an insane asylum, because only a maniac would invent stuff like this. I mean, people have been programmed into this sort of stuff. We've been programmed into hating the Jews. It's the government of Israel, which is run by this whole Zionist system, which has programmed these people to be this way. And it's a very, very effective attack dog for the rest of the world, because it's caught up in this whole woolen structure of anti-Semitism and the Holocaust and all this stuff that protects it. You can't do anything about this attack dog because it has to be there, and it has to be an attack dog because everybody hates it. If it isn't an attack dog, someone might get it. This is the mentality of the whole thing. This is what Israel is. It's an amazing thing that's been constructed here. But ultimately, the problem is our governments, and the only thing that's going to deal with that is us. We've got to realize who we are and realize that these guys are just people, just like us. They're not anything special. Government doesn't even really exist. Government is just an idea in a book. It's just a concept. People go into these big buildings and they do what it says in the book,
Yeah.
And if they haven't got a way of stealing from you and doing more things and putting more rules in place, they write it in the book and they put a fancy stamp on it and they say, now we can do this. It's just an idea,
And then people say that that's fake to a certain extent, but it has real life effects on us. I mean, I'm not a believer in politics, and I've been very hesitant to talk about political action or anything of that level. But I'm at a stage now when I realize that in every walk of life, there needs to be good people that, in an effect, infiltrate into any system that they can, in whatever area that they can have any kind of influence, be that politics, be that the business world or the cultural, the arts, whatever area you can, to begin to spread sanity in this insane world and prevent and stop and halt bad people from doing anything. I necessarily don't think that the political system is going to be the ultimate way that we're going to, lead and structure things per se in the future. But for now, it's like we need people to that degree make that sacrifice for the lack of a better term. I hate to use it, but make that sacrifice of trying to of spending parts of their life in trying to do something which they know is good, working towards a good goal. Because if a lot of these people who claim that they have, answers and they think in a good way and they know they're interested in truth and history and the real story of everything, if these people continue just to sit on their asses and not do anything in any regard, it's not going to matter. There has to be a certain point where we actually, we take up the sword, or we start using those words, whatever influence that we do have upon the world, and work in that direction. So I've kind of, it's such in a dire strait at this point that I've come to realize that in whatever area we can, we need to try to improve and make betterments in whatever system that is in. Max.
Well, we do. Politics is unfortunately the only thing that the masses understand. So you need to have some sort of a political movement which will start bringing the bold truth to people in a comfortable way. They can identify with it, and even with attempting to bring in a new system and all sorts of stuff like this, like the Ubuntu system that Michael Challenger talks about. I haven't actually looked at it very much because I just haven't had time. But I don't think we can really offer people a new system. I think that if we can change our perspective of who we are and how we interact with the world around us and start acting according to moral parameters rather than legal parameters, then we can change the world. We will need some sort of political system to allow us to do this. We need people who are awake to go into politics to start shifting things from the inside and stop playing by their rules once you get in there. Start speaking the bold truth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, look at
really,
Farage and what what's happening now in the European Parliament and these anti-EU parties that actually are getting in there. I mean, that's a great sign. It means that they're speaking up. You can agree or not with all their politics or whatnot, but it means that for once there are a couple of parties that actually are offering some kind of different narrative when it comes to should we all be part of the European Union and continue this expansion of centralized government. And that's a really positive thing. I think that's at least, I mean, again, it doesn't mean that it has to be where some people are sitting around waiting for something to be absolutely flawless, 100% perfect to come along before they decide to kind of join in the cause or just put a little bit of effort behind it. I think it's rather the opposite way. We have to find where is there an ounce of a little bit of improvement where we can go. Let's go in that direction and kind of nudge our way forward. Again, otherwise nothing else will be done and we'll sit around and wait on our asses forever,
Yeah, well, people are waiting to be saved. Give me the script that will save me. I just don't want to participate. Just let me know when I'm saved, please.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of attitude. But we don't really need to structure any type of new system. We need to rediscover ourselves, because once we start operating according to moral parameters, then the new system will construct itself around us. It'll be an organic thing. This system that we have could work to a point where we rediscover ourselves enough that we don't need a system, but we have to change the way we apply ourselves to it. And if we change the way we interact with each other and start doing what is right in all that we do, rather than supporting wars, rather than supporting a government that's supporting a war, rather than not questioning this authority and not questioning what's going on, step into ourselves. And we can do this because we have discovered ourselves enough to appreciate the people around us and realize that we're all in this together, and get rid of all this division and barriers, realize that we're being played. We're all being played by parameters that aren't our own. And, we can step into our power and do what is right in all that we do, and a new system will mold itself around us. It will have to change according to our new state of consciousness. You know what I'm saying? It's got to be an internal thing. You've got to change the way you apply yourself to the world. You've got to have that warrior spirit. You've got to be able to step into the divine masculine. It's there.
Yeah.
We've been taught to become these fluffy little non-violent things, and I'm not advocating violence at all. But don't step on me, because I will respond.
Yeah.
I'm not going to step on you. I don't even want to prosecute anybody for what they've done. I don't care. Just go away. Stop controlling my life. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to go in another direction. And you don't represent me, and I don't have to give you my tax money. I don't have to do any of this stuff, because you're destroying the planet around me, and it's not acceptable. We just have to step into who we are, I think, Henrik. If we do start doing what is right in all that we do, the system can't function according to that.
Yeah.
But the hard thing is breaking the programming of people. I mean, I can't imagine being an Israeli soldier and going and doing the damage that these people are doing to Gaza Strip right now. Like that video footage that I showed you, what they did to that one suburb in 1 hour. These are residential homes. These are people. These are defenseless people. And not only are they doing this to these people, they're slandering them by calling them terrorists while they do it. And this is the most brutal terror you've ever seen. And they've bombed hospitals, they've bombed mosques, they're shooting ambulances, they've committed so many war crimes. And the only thing that's going to stop it is an international force that goes in there and stops the Israelis killing these people. And that's only going to come if we choose to step into our power and demand that it happens. Demand that our governments do it. And the Israeli people and the Israeli soldiers need to wake up to what they're doing. This has the potential to destroy the reputation of Israel forever, what these people are doing to Gaza Strip. And this will eventually bring about the implosion of the state of Israel if they continue with this ethnic cleansing of Gaza Strip.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think the tables on that will eventually turn. And again, if this is a foundation that's built on lies and the kind of immorality that we've seen, then I don't think that nature is going to allow it to stand, to be honest. And just speaking to something you said before there as well, I think that the New Age and all these trappings have been tremendously beneficial in keeping people in check in terms of non-action and actually sticking your head in the sand. And but the fact is, it doesn't matter how much we're trying to escape from it or trying to pretend that it doesn't exist. It was kind of what I said before. If you are cornered up against a wall, I mean, it's a matter of you acting to be able to preserve your own life. And I think that has been another aspect to all of this. Now, I mentioned sacrifice before, and I mean that in the truest positive sense that I can. But today, it's like we're expected to make sacrifices that are based on this non-action, that we are to give up ourselves, that we are to even remove our basic human nature for the sake of some kind of global, new world order paradise pipe dream that they have, an idea of how we're supposed to live or something like that, where we basically are, where we remove our basic humanity so that the system may operate peacefully. It's not a system that is adapted towards how we are or how we are as human beings and how we live and how we prefer to live and with whom and everything else. It's about them creating for us a framework where we have to basically castrate ourselves and mind numb ourselves to be able to live in it. And that's the wrong kind of sacrifice to make. And I think a lot of that is actually tied into some of these, trappings around, as you said before, the kind of Eckhart Tolle thinking or the New Age. And sure, there can be some good ideas coming through there too, but at the same time, this idea of not you being able to stand up for yourself or defend yourself or even using violence at these instances is something that I've been becoming ferociously critical of, actually, because I see how much damage that it has caused, Max.
Well, yeah, it has. I mean, it's allowed to see what's happening in Gaza. It's allowed this to occur, this attitude, and make no mistake, we're seeing, talking of sacrifice, we're seeing the sacrifice of 900,000 children in the Gaza Strip. 1.8 million people, 900,000 innocent children will die in this battle if we do not stop it. And don't believe the figures that are coming in of 1,000 dead and this and that. There'll be tens of thousands dead in Gaza Strip. It's very, very populated, very, very densely packed stretch of land. And these people are sacrificing themselves for the world, and the world should stand up to this and should stand up and see what's coming if they don't. And there's so many rabbit holes that people have been led down, even the whole free man stuff. All this stuff, learning the law and knowing that you're not your name and all this sort of stuff. In a perfect world, that's all very good, well, to know that stuff. If the system works and if these people are honest and if they're not psychopaths that are going to come and rip you to pieces with dime ammunition and a drop of white phosphorus over your alternate community. Because this is where we're going, We've been numbed into a state where we would allow the sacrifice of 900,000 children to come onto our televisions every day and just think that it's all good and Israel is just defending itself. Now, like Claire Daly said, it's like the equivalent of a heavyweight boxer taking on a newborn baby. That's what we're seeing, and the world's just letting it happen. And that's a scary thing. Because all our governments are supporting the system is they can go to any community, they can declare it terrorist, they can say, look, these guys were dissenting, we had to do it, and actually they killed them all themselves. They told them not to leave their homes. If you don't leave your homes, well, you're going to die because we're going to turn the whole place into rubble because there might be a terrorist in there. It's legitimizing this. That's what they're doing to Gaza. They're turning it into rubble, the entire Gaza Strip. And they're saying we're giving the people warning to leave. They can go leave their homes and be safe. But there's nowhere to go. There's a wall around three sides of the country and an ocean on the other side. And if you swim into the ocean and you get shot, there's nowhere to go. There is no safe area. So they can't leave their homes. There's nothing they can possibly do to stop what's happening. They're completely and utterly defenseless. The only people that can save us is us. So please make noise. Everybody make noise. Now's the time to stand up. This is a litmus test, Henrik. And I say it's been a real... The screaming silence from so much of the alternate media on this issue has been deafening.
Right. Yeah. No, I believe you're absolutely right when you say as well that this is something that sooner or later in one version or another is going to show up at your own door. I mean, that's what I really believe. I think that this idea of, urban warfare and the way that, militarization has occurred of the police forces and these kinds of civil war conditions that we mentioned before due to ethnic and religious conflicts and cultural conflicts is something that's going to reach us all if we don't speak up and stop this in its tracks now, because eventually we can continue to stick our heads in the sand, but that's not going to change the environment around us. And I think that this is a very important point to continue to bring up and say that, I mean, if you're smart enough and you can see the trajectory of where this is heading, of where we're all heading around the world with these kinds of global conflicts that they're creating, then we can see that, okay, this is something that's going to occur within, X amount of years. And if we don't try to stop it now, it is going to unfold and it is going to happen. So it is up to people who have that capacity and to see those, signs, if you will, to speak up about it and say something to that effect. Otherwise, it's going to be creating conditions which are not going to be pleasant, and then we have to face them. Maybe not that it's too late. I don't consider that to be the case, but it's going to be at a point when things are going to be certainly more desperate than they are now. So how do you see the changing of this, let's say, dialogue in the media then, and kind of changing this whole rhythm? Because I think that the mainstream press is slowly doing itself the disservice of discrediting itself, which is a plus for us, of course, in terms of how they're reporting on stories, and people know more and more that it's all lies. They're turning away from it, which is very positive, So how do you see that playing out, of bringing more attention to these kinds of issues in the future to make people wake up, Max? Is it about continuing to kind of push on the same issues that we've been talking about today, and continue to showing the double standards, continue to show the hypocrisy in not only Israel but all the other policies that we see that the globalists are creating? Or do you think we should have a different approach and a different plan altogether?
Well, look, I think we can do all of the above, and we should continue to do all of the above, but we've really got to stand tall and start questioning these people openly, and start standing up for what's right. And when we approach this issue, we've got to stop dealing in as much as countries. Like I said, we've got to realize that it isn't really essentially the state of Israel that's doing this. It's this Zionist control grid that's doing this, and this is sort of run out of Europe anyway. I mean, Israel is just the attack dog. The whole planet is under hypnosis. The whole planet is programmed. We've got to step above the programming and realize that these aren't countries battling with each other. These are battles of energy, and it's a battle of control of the whole planet that's been put in place here. So we've got to realize that none of our governments are doing the right thing. None of our governments have our interests at heart. Any government that is supporting this incursion into Gaza Strip right now is part of the problem. Very, very much part of the problem. The only thing that's going to deal with that is us. We have to deal with our governments. These are all rogue governments. Unfortunately, they are, because they're not dealing with this issue. You've got to wonder why. Why is everyone letting Israel do what it does? Or when I say Israel, essentially it's the Benjamin Netanyahu government doing what it does. But who does Benjamin Netanyahu work for? I mean, some people say he has a lot of to do with MI5 and with the Crown and all sorts of stuff. You've got to wonder whether this whole influence is in there. You could go down that path if you want
possibly.
to. Yeah, but I mean, ultimately you can look at all of this stuff, but it's another rabbit hole. Ultimately, it's irrelevant. What's relevant is that we have a clear and present danger right here, right now. How do we deal with it, And we've got to realize, well, all of our governments are supporting it. That's why it's still going on. So we've got to question our governments, not just have marches in the street, but openly start questioning these people and start openly questioning the media. Why aren't you reporting on this issue properly? Everybody should be ringing their politicians. Everybody should be ringing the media. They need to be getting thousands and thousands of phone calls saying, we know what's going on, and if you don't address it, well, we'll come in and address it. We'll come to the studio and we'll talk on the TV. These studios are just little places. TV studios look like they're big, huge buildings and stuff, but they're just places, These are just people. They control all the airwaves and they program everybody. We've got to sort of find a way of dealing with the programming. We've got to find a way of getting the message out. We've got to make as much noise as possible and as publicly as possible, and really start questioning these people, because they are looking like fools, and they're not going to like looking like fools for too much longer. So things may get pretty ugly pretty quickly if we don't, And we can't let them get away with this. We can't let them get away with this blatant ethnic cleansing and this horrible terrorism that they're committing against Gaza Strip. We've got to do something about it. And really, ultimately, it's Western governments. They're allowing it. So we've got to deal with it. So again, why does Israel get away with it? So perhaps it's the Samson option. Perhaps that's what they want to do. Perhaps it's real. Mm-hmm. If it is real, I mean, you've got to wonder, is anything they say real? Is Iron Dome real? I've heard from different people that all Iron Dome actually does is put about 9 or 10 different blips on the screen when one missile's launched, and it puts 10 more on the screen, then shoots 10 of them down and one hits the ground. So it doesn't even exist. It's just so they can say that there's thousands of rockets coming over. See, it's on our computer. It says so.
Right. But
they just put them all in there. It's only probably a tenth of that. And they're just little pipes. And who's sending these pipes over? Who benefits from these pipes coming over? Israel. Look what they get to do in response to these little pipes, which don't do any damage at all.
Yeah, it might be it might be a false flag attack. Basically, that's what you're saying, and the response is the desired outcome that they wanted to achieve anyway, which is to bomb the Gaza people living in Gaza into oblivion, basically.
Yeah, it is. It is. And the only people who can stop it is us. Because like I said, they've destabilised the entire region. There's no really any way to get in there. You need an international force to go in there, which would have to come across the Mediterranean Sea, come from Turkey or Italy or anywhere, somewhere, But you'd never get there by land. But it needs to stop. It needs to stop right now. And the only people who are going to stop it is us. I've been really pushing this because I've got friends on the ground there. Beautiful, beautiful people that are still alive who cannot believe what's happening. Why isn't anyone standing up for us? These people, they took out Al-Shifa Hospital yesterday. Like, this is the biggest hospital in Gaza. They're shelling hospitals, they're shelling ambulances. They're completely ethnically cleansing the entire Gaza Strip, and they're getting away with it. And it's making the whole world look like a bunch of fools, really. We've got to do something, folks. This is the litmus test, because if they can get away with this, well, that's about it. The world doesn't care what we do. If we can do this, we can do anything. And that's the problem, If we don't address it, I keep saying it to people, the way of Palestine will be the way of the world. And we need to pay attention. This is the moment that we have to step up to the plate. I think, as I said before, I think it's the biggest event since 9/11. I've never ever seen a Western so-called democratic nation so openly carry out war crimes and just bring the party to you, with weapons from nightmares, weapons that are stuff you couldn't even dream of inventing, the horrible things that they're doing to these children. So it's a huge blood sacrifice, Henrik, and it's very disturbing. It's very disturbing that people aren't paying attention to it, That's the most disturbing part about it, that people simply aren't paying attention. I mean, there's a lot of people marching in the streets, but a lot of people aren't. A lot of people just think, oh, they're at it again.
Yeah, exactly. They get they get these ideas come to them, or these news stories rather come to them many times a year. In some cases, some of these more extreme kind of waves come every other year or something like that, But it's one more point here before we wrap up. What do you think it would take for the surrounding? Because you mentioned Arab Spring, this being kind of like a ruse to kind of get them disorganized to a certain extent, trying to detopple their own government, etc. There might be of course, some true sentiments behind that among the people who are protesting and all that stuff, but largely that they've been kind of manipulated into it. I've had that sense of the matter for a long time as well. But what would it take for the surrounding, let's say, Arab areas, do you think, to kind of clean up from this and look at their common cause and look at towards Israel and start helping Palestine out? Because again, I'm surprised. What is the West Bank? It borders to Jordan there and stuff like that. I mean, again, I'm surprised that we're not seeing much more Iran. But I guess they might be so terrified of this idea that Israel, they even have nukes at their disposal, as we know from Vanunu, that they might use them on anybody who tried to help out in the situation. Maybe that's the case.
Well, yeah, I mean, if Iran steps 1 foot in to help Palestine, you've got your World War III straight up, and they'd love that. Israel's been trying to kickstart that for a long time. And the neighbouring countries, Jordan and stuff, you can't get there. I mean, you can get there by land. You'd never be able to fly there. Israel's a major military power. It could stomp on any of its countries, any country in the area. It's the strongest military in the area, so... and Jordan, to go there by land, you'd have to cross Israel. So you can't get across the Sinai. And Egypt's not going to help because Egypt's completely destabilized, and this guy's a complete American and Israeli sympathizer. So, and he's probably going to get a cut of the oil fields anyway that they found off Gaza. So he's completely closed Rafah border, so there's no way out. So it's very, very difficult for any of the Arab nations to step in and help. The only thing that's going to stop it is pressure from the West. Really, this is the only thing that's going to stop it, and that's difficult. I mean, Israel, like it said, with the Samson option, it says it's got missiles trained on every major city on earth, and if anybody ever threatens Israel's existence, then it will take out the entire world. That's what the Israeli government has said on at least 3 occasions, and they call that the Samson option, and you can Google that, and you can see the statements that these people have made about this. This is pretty scary. I mean, this is holding the world to ransom, basically saying we're going to do things our way, and if anybody steps in to stop us, you're going to be viewed as anti-Semitic, and you're going to be viewed as someone who is a threat to the state of Israel, and so will destroy the world. So basically, we're going to do everything we want our way, and you're all going to go along with it, or we're going to destroy the world. That's kind of what they've set up with this whole Samson option. And they've managed to do this by saying we're the victim, everybody hates us, so We need the ability to be able to kill everybody if we need to, because someone may hurt us. And that's a hell of a culture to set up. And this is sort of, if you look at the whole Khazar history and how they converted and they really became to believe all of this stuff and believe they were this line, and then they suddenly got attacked and got thrown out of the area and wandered as nomads for years and kept this whole seething, hatred and seething, we want revenge and we've got to protect ourselves, and this whole mentality alive. You can see how it's kind of led to this, you know what I mean? But it's like a victim mentality taken to the most extreme to become a completely psychopathic culture. And if you look at books such as Political Ponerology, when you've got psychopaths that create a culture or create a business or create a society, then the morality of the psychopath becomes the morality of those who work within that structure. It's just naturally taught to them to operate according to certain parameters. They may not like it. They may feel guilty about it. They may be doing the wrong thing and feel bad about it. But eventually, over generations and over time, that gets weeded out, and the whole culture and the whole view of yourself and the view of the outside world becomes a psychopathic view, and you don't have empathy. You don't have empathy towards anybody outside that bubble. And this is what's been created through this whole victim mentality of the Zionist culture, which is essentially what the Zionist culture is. It's a victim mentality taken to a psychopathic degree. Really, I mean, Zionism is truly a mental disease. It's a psychic pathogen, and it turns people into something that is I don't know what it is that is Zionist, but really it's a huge victim mentality taken to the degree of a psychopath where everybody is against you, and so you've just got to set yourself up to what we see as this modern state of Israel. I mean, how else do you explain it, Henrik? It's a completely psychopathic culture,
Yeah, no, I would include the Abrahamic religions in that too, definitely as a kind of a mind virus that came on later in the game and later on to the scene. Of course, that's a huge issue in itself, and maybe we can continue and talk more about that at another time, Max. But thank you so much for coming back again. Very, very interesting discussion, as always. Some challenging ideas, I think, and specifically some points of history that we urge people to look into for themselves. I think some very important and interesting issues to get some thoughts firing around, as it's about time to question all aspects of history and not just kind of buy the version we've been sold in certain aspects and then challenging it in others. I think it's about having a broad base of questions fired away at all of it. So do look into it, folks. All right, thank you so much, Max, for coming back on again. Give us your websites again, and if there's anything else you'd like to leave us with.
My website is thecrowhouse.com. That's thecrowhouse.com, and the Gaza website is gazashield.com. It'd be great if you could go and sign up to that. Something I just love what you said there is the Abrahamic religion. Something that I love that John Lash said was that that was the moment that man got dispossessed, was when Abraham was promised the land of Israel. And essentially at that moment, man was dispossessed from the earth, and that line went out dispossessing everybody else. And that's what we see here. Thanks for having me on, Henrik. It was great to talk to you again, brother.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, don't miss our upcoming 2 programs with John Lash on a lot of the connected issues that we discussed here today, taking this discussion into the much-needed territory of the identification of the problem and what to do with it. We also have an update from the gallery owner in Sweden who exhibited Don Park's art. Do you remember him? Henrik Rundqvist, whose gallery got raided by police on opening day of the showing. He's now awaiting to be prosecuted for hate speech. Sweden, oh Sweden, the land where everyone is accepted and equal. Unless you're Swedish and critical of cultural Marxism, pathological multiculturalism, and believe in free speech. Just hate yourself and bow down. You'll be fine. That's right. We also have Janice Barcelo and Mark Passio coming on after this. Then we have Jack Donovan on Radio 314. We are working on some other really good shows as well, so stay tuned and keep arming yourself with truth and a level-headed approach with both feet firmly placed in the beauty and wisdom of nature and the natural order. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening.